Hey everybody, welcome to the show. We're on a little bit earlier today, but hopefully you were able to find us and join us. So for today, it is my honor to have someone that I've been following for quite a while. His name is Mitch Lafon. Mitch Lafon is a rock journalist who's been doing this for a very long time and has pretty much interviewed, I'd say, just about everybody that we know in rock at this point. And also, I'm happy to say that he is also a big Kiss fan. So there might be a little bit of that as well. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Mitch
Good day.
Lafon. Hey, Mitch, how are you, man?
Good day. Welcome to the spare bedroom, by the way.
No worries. Welcome to my mess of a music room. So if that makes you feel any better.
There you go. Yeah. But pleasure to be here. It's always fun to talk rock, which is what I love doing.
Yes. And you've been pretty busy at it. 2 interviews today I've seen so far. So
yeah, I posted 2 today. I was going to post another one tomorrow, and I worked on another comedy routine interview that'll go up either this weekend or Monday. So yeah, it's just nonstop. I think I need to sort of throttle back at some point and give myself a bit of a break. But listen, rock stars are home. They are talking. Yes. They normally go to live shows to promote what they're doing. There are no live shows to be had. So plan B.
This is it.
Promote through people.
Yeah, this is it. All right, so before we get going here, I just want to say hello to some of the people in the chat. We got 20 in here right now, so I'd like to say hi to Sandra, Music Therapy Laz, welcome. Brian Landreth is with us. There's my buddy Bruce. Nice to see you. Just going down here. Meryl J, welcome.
Did we say hi to Sandra Picorni?
Sandra Picorni, yes.
No, she says hi to Mitch, and Rick says hi. So hello, everybody. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Six String Brian, right. DT.
It's going to be a psycho circus.
Michael LePanzi. Lots of Kiss references today. Rick Hafner, Jack Clark. Welcome, everybody. And if you all have questions for Mitch.
Is Mitch a radio show? I have no idea what that means. Who's the announcer voice? Well, am I the announcer voice? But no, I'm by myself. I am the standalone rock journalist and Twitter person and media person, and do all that wonderful stuff. But yeah, let's go with questions and stories.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. So I've already heard this story, but okay, let's start right at the beginning. So what was the spark? What was the band? What got you really into music?
Well, obviously it was Kiss that elevated me from just a normal kid to fan to doing what I do. I mean, I started off listening to my mom's classical records, Beethoven's Fifth and ABBA and all that stuff. And then my brother brought home Love Gun. He had borrowed it from a kid down the street. And I stared at it as it sat up against the vinyl or the record player for weeks, a couple of weeks. And finally I said, all right, let me try this. And then, you hear Shock Me and you hear I Stole Your Love, and you hear that stuff and you go, all right, I'm in. And of course the visual didn't hurt, the Kiss with the blood running down on the inner sleeve and all that. Right. So I'm trying to think back. That must have been 77, 78, 79 around when my brother borrowed it. So,
right.
Starting off at 8, 9, 10 years old, you saw Kiss, and then Kiss is coming to town on the Dynasty Tour, August 6, 1979. So almost, what are we looking at here? 41 years to the day, almost. Mm-hmm. Last week, actually.
Last week, yeah.
So I went to see the show, and of course, Kiss doesn't just sort of walk out there in jeans and a t-shirt. On the Dynasty Tour, you hear this rumble before they come up. And then they pop out from under the ground, and then they're standing there in the full green thing and the whole purple thing, and it just looks spectacular. And of course, before the show and before they come on, there's a smell in the venue that you're not used to, and there's
yes.
There's people throwing toilet paper. We don't do that anymore. But in
No.
the late 70s and early 80s, you went to a concert, people were throwing frisbees and they were throwing toilet paper. And I don't know where that came from, but it was every show. You know, you had to go to the show with a roll of toilet paper in your pocket, ready to
Ready
toss
to
it.
toss it. You
Uh,
know, that
and
was
then I
your
saw
first.
Kiss. Yeah.
That
So,
was your first concert. My
mhm.
first concert was 2 days before that, August 4th, 1979, at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto.
Right,
That was,
right.
that was my first show ever.
But the difference was in the Forum, there were Stanley Cup banners from the ceiling.
I was waiting for a shot. There it is.
In Toronto, they have those empty spaces that they keep hoping to fill. But yeah, no.
Yeah.
So no, it was an exciting moment, and I'm sure Kiss at Maple Leaf Garden. I mean, listen, it's a venerable stadium or arena.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
just a great time, and you know, back then it wasn't all over the internet. So by the time the first show came to town, you got to experience it in your own way. And now my kids, you know, they go see whatever Post Malone or whatever, and they've studied it on YouTube, you know, 6 months in advance.
Right.
I don't know if that would have been the same thing. It's like, oh, I know what he's going to say. I know he's going to dance. I know what he's going to move. And
Yeah. Yeah. You've seen the show before you've seen the show.
now I got to tell you, when I started doing the rock reporting thing, when YouTube came about, you know, I was doing a rock photographer, so I would actually sit in the pit. And when Bon Jovi came to town, there was one time I had a photo pass, and I really wanted to make sure I got the proper shots. I'm trying to think what tour it was. It must have been the Crush tour or just after. I went to YouTube and I figured out which were the first 3 songs, you know, looked up the set list. And
Right.
then because as a photographer, you only get the first 3 songs, sometimes less, never more. And I studied the first 3 songs, and I found different videos from different cities, and I've tried to figure out where they go, and I figured out where John stands and all. And I'm telling you, I got some great shots because of that, because I was able to sort of look at the show and go, okay, he's got these cues. He walks out, he stands here, he goes over, and he does it at every show. Every show was exactly the same, so you know their cues, and so it ended up being very useful for the photography stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll use it as a tool then. So usually, I mean, my channel is a guitar music kind of channel, and usually when I have people on and I ask them what was the band that got him into, usually that getting into gets them, you know, wanting to play an instrument. Now, was that something that you thought about doing? Did you
I
ever
tried
want
and
to play
failed at
guitar?
drums, and I tried and failed at guitar. I tried to be Eric Carr, and I tried to be Ace Frehley, and I couldn't manage it. But if you want a good guitar story, I got a great one from just 6 months ago.
Yeah, shoot. Go.
So 6 months ago, well, actually November, but let's say 6 months ago, November 2019, I was over at Frank Marino's house, right?
Nice.
Now we know
He's
Frank.
local.
He's local.
That's
So
right,
so
yeah.
so I'm sitting there at Frank Marino's house, and we're talking about how I had introduced him to Frank Hannon of Tesla. And as I'm standing there or sitting it there in his living room, Joe Bonamassa calls. So
Wow.
I'm like, I got Joe Bonamassa on my cell phone talking to Frank Marino about the music they just made in the room over there with Frank Hannon, you know, and I'm just like, how did this happen? How did I become this? You know, so that was yes, that's a show off kind of story. But if you want to talk guitars, that's a pretty good story right there.
That is an incredible story. Since I'm a huge Joe Bonamassa fan, especially.
I don't know if you saw me on Joe's show, by the way.
I did, and I'm like, wow, look at Mitch on Joe Bonamassa. That's awesome.
I know, which I thought was great because they had me on. I'm trying to think. I think I was the show right after Neil Sean, I believe, but also the show right before Paul Stanley, right? So when they press released it, they said Joe Bonamassa live from Nerdville, blah blah blah. Neil Sean, Mitch Lafon, Paul Stanley, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll take that.
That's pretty good company right there. Yeah.
Yes, I opened for Paul. I got to open for Paul the week before, but yeah, it was great to be on Joe's show. Joe's a good guy.
Awesome. Yeah, Joe seems like a really good dude.
Mm-hmm.
So when did now I know you have a story Because I've heard the
I
story
got plenty
before,
of stories.
well, your very first interview when you were a little tyke.
When I was
You want to
11 years
share that
old.
one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
June 9th, 1980. I got to interview Gene Simmons of Kiss, obviously, right there on your whatever left nipple. Over there on your left nipple. No, but I got
he owns it.
he owns that.
Yeah, he owns
I
it.
got to interview Gene, and folks, I was wondering, how does an 11-year-old interview Gene? And really, when you ask that question, it's because you're thinking of it from a 2020 perspective. Now there's gatekeepers and there's this and there's that. I phoned Ocoin Management. Unmasked had come out or was recently coming out. It came out in May, but I don't know if I phoned before or after. And I said, hey, I'd like to set up an interview to talk about Unmasked. He said, yeah, no problem. They said, can you come down to Ocoin Management?
Wow.
And I went, yeah, no problem. Now they originally set me up with Paul Stanley as an interview, which has its own little aside to it, because they set me up with the interview with Paul, and I go off and I convince my mom we got to drive to New York. And she's like, what the f are you talking about? I go, we got to drive to New York, interview Kiss. She's like, no, you're not. I go, yeah. So she said, okay. And she drove me, and they phoned back and they said, oh, we're sorry to tell you Paul won't be able to do the interview. And I was like, dang, so close.
Yeah.
And then they said, we could offer you Gene. And I was like, okay, would that be all right? But yeah, it's fine. No worries. But
yeah,
the funny thing is, though, up until about 2018, Paul became the elusive one. I had these backstage passes for Kiss at the Hot in the Shade tour in Montreal.
Right.
And I go backstage, and Gene's there, and Bruce is there, and Eric, and I say hi to all of them and get autographs. And no pictures, because it's 1989. There's no cell phones. There's no, and no Paul. So I said to either Eric or I go, what happened? Oh, he broke his ribs in Pittsburgh last week or something like that. Right. Of course, he comes out and he does his show in the bandage, and of course, that's an infamous thing about how Paul broke his ribs in Cape. But of course, I get to not meet Paul. Right. And then a few years later, the convention tour comes in '95, and they had set it up where everybody's on this side or that side, and at the end of the show, they're going to come and do autographs. You got to pick this side or that side, and you can't pick both sides. So you didn't know who was going to be, so I randomly picked the right side, and of course, Gene and Paul come out on the right side, and Eric and Paul go out on the left side. So I don't get to meet him. A few years later, working at a magazine out of Toronto, there was these opportunities to interview Paul. I set it up. I got the interview. It's good to go. The time is set. And I get a message from the publicist literally about an hour before going, Martin Popoff has taken the interview. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, he's the senior editor and has decided that he'll be doing it instead of you. And I went,
oh, shit.
Mother, he stole it. I'm like, you son of a gun. So he stole it, right? And then, of course, more time goes along, and then Kiss does the farewell tour, and then they disappear, and then they do the We're Back tour, but they don't come up to Canada on the We're Back tour, so there's no Canadian. And it just kept being this thing of, I miss Paul by that much all the time for, 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, a couple of years ago, 2018, I guess, they announced the end of the road. I forget, maybe it was something else they had announced. Anyway, I talked to Doc McGee, and he puts me on the phone with Paul. You got a hard 20 minutes, and hard 20 minutes means that 20 minutes they hang up on you, and that's just the way it is. And listen, you can't bemoan anybody, because that's what they do. And that's not just Kiss, that's any of the big stars, because they're busy. Right. And Alice Cooper gives you a hard 15, but it's okay. Those are the rules. Either you play by the rules or you don't. Whoops. That was my microphone that I smashed as I was gesticulating. So that's fine. Anyway, I get on the phone, And we get to the 20 minutes, and Paul seems to be having a good time, or seems to be enjoying the conversation, and we keep going. It ends up being about 48 minutes or something. So
Wow.
that was kind of cool, you know. And the only place you can hear it now, because I was doing it for Westwood One at the time, the only place where it is I threw up the audio on YouTube. So you can't podcast it anywhere, but you can certainly YouTube it. So so that was fun. And it sort of closed the circle on my interviews. I've interviewed, well, I believe every living member of KISS now. I've interviewed Peter, I've interviewed Paul, I've interviewed Vinnie Vincent, Bruce, Eric, Tommy. I've done them all. So I got, with Paul, I got to put the cherry on top and go, all right, I'm out.
You know what?
Interviews needed.
I've met everyone, and actually, speaking of Paul, in Toronto, we had lots of access to Paul because when he was here doing Phantom. And after the show, you knew that if you waited out the backstage door, he would come, and he would actually come out, and he would fully expect people to be there. And he'd like, okay, who wants anything signed? And he would sit there and sign stuff and say hello and take pictures and all that. And then he would jump in his car and take off. So you could do that. You could be there every night of the week if you wanted to. So I got to meet them all. The ironic thing is, I mean, Ace is the reason why I play guitar, and I have my obsession with Les Pauls, as you could probably see. And that's the only guy that I have never met. I've seen him live. He's been 5 feet in front of me, at his solo shows, but I've never talked to Ace, never shook his hand, never. Ironically enough.
Somebody over here says I'd be pissed at stealing the interview. Yeah, I was, still am. But Ace Frehley, let me tell you two good stories with Ace. The first time I get to interview Ace, back around 2004, 2005. Obviously, he's no longer in the band. They're moving forward with Tommy Thayer,
right? And
he had some kind of thing out. I forget what it was exactly. And the publicist says, "You want to interview Ace?" And blah, blah, blah. And I said, "Sure, no problem." They said, "We'll give you 20 minutes." I go, "Fine, 20 minutes with Ace. I'm down." And the publicist says, "Well, there's two caveats." And I go, "Okay, whatever. I'll play along. A, I have to sit in on this, and if you ask anything that I don't like, I'm hanging up on you." And I went,
"Wow.
Okay. And what's B? B, no questions about KISS." And I went, "Oh, no questions about KISS? What?"
Yeah. That's
so that ended up being about a 7-minute interview, and I was just like, I was so annoyed by it, The next time I interview Ace, the second time, he's out with a earpiece in or whatever, and he's, you can hear him going, "Yeah, I'd like that one," and he goes, hold on, and I go, "What?" He goes, "I'm buying a mattress. I just need to see if it's firm enough." And I'm like, "What?" And so the whole interview was done while he was walking around, a mattress store. And so there was all these like mattress references, and then he's like, "Oh, hold on, I got to get it out to the car." And he's like, hold on. The guy's having a hard time getting it into my car. And I'm like, wow. Okay.
Wow.
But on the third interview with Ace, we got it right. And currently he's got this new solo album coming out.
Originals 2?
Originals 2.
Yeah.
And I'm in line, and I was told there'll be another one. So hopefully the fourth one will be as good as the third one, and will be a nice 20-25 minute chat, and there'll be no weird impositions about no KISS questions and no mattresses being bought. But he did just buy a new place in New Jersey, so maybe he's going to move back, and maybe I'll get the maybe I'll get him buying wicker baskets or something.
So we got a question for you. This is from Brian Landreth. He says, "I wonder if Mitch ever asked any stars how it feels to have forums dedicated to analyzing every piece of gear, notes played. I doubt they ever imagined they would that would ever happen."
Well, I mean, to break down the question is, have I ever asked anybody how does it feel to be under the microscope?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
I haven't asked that question directly. How do you feel to be under the microscope? But obviously, it comes up. Sometimes. artists get particularly annoyed at what goes on sites like Blabbermouth that leave it completely unfiltered and let, and some question the fandom, if you like somebody, somebody the other day, and I'll give you an example. I posted something about Def Leppard, and it's in a Def Leppard news group, and the person writes, they haven't been good since Pyromania. Which, okay, if you feel that, that's fine. But then why are you in a Def Leppard news group? Because there's 37 years of history after that. So why do you want to be in a place where for 37 years you've just felt nothing but hate? They're not going to make Pyromania 2. So
yeah. In that case, they're just there to stir the pot, basically, is what really comes down to.
Yeah, and it is incredibly unfair to micromanage all these bands and all these artists, especially the ones that get older, because, and I always use this analogy. If you're a fan of a sports team, Ken Dryden with the Habs, Daryl Sittler with their careers in hockey or in football or in baseball, football even worse, they're usually around 6 years, 7 years. Some players will tough out 10 years, 12 years.
Yeah.
Some of those superstars, Wayne Gretzky will give you 10, 15 years. A lot of the plumber types will be there one season and they're gone. And then, of course, there's a lot of the ones in football after 3-4 years, they get injured and they move along. And we revere them. We go, oh, my God, Ken Dryden was the greatest goalie of all time. Oh, my God, Nolan Ryan was the best pitcher of all time. And we stop them in that moment of those best 5 years of their lives, and we just think, wow, he was the greatest pitcher of all time. Now, if any of those guys, Ken Dryden, Nolan Ryan, Daryl, if they went on and had 40-year careers like Kiss, well, what do you think they would look like now in the NHL, in Major? They would look awful. They wouldn't be good. They'd be slower than everybody else. They'd be the young kids would be running circles around them. So we sit here and go, wow, they're the greatest thing because they gave us 7 years of entertainment. But you look at a Kiss or a Rolling Stones or who've given us 30 years, 40 years, 50 years of entertainment. And instead of going, wow, thank you for 40 years of entertainment, we go, fuck you. And it's just like, well, why would you do that? It blows my mind that somebody who gives you 5 years of entertainment is revered, and somebody who gives you essentially they're a lifetime of entertainment. Right. And you look at some of the Scorpions, which officially started in 1965, are going on to 55 years as a band. You look at the Rolling Stones that are almost 60 years in a band. Why not just say, hey, you know what? I appreciate the fact that you've gotten slower and you've gotten older. I know my shoulder hurts. I know my back hurts. I can appreciate. And just say thank you. I don't understand why you always have to be so critical all the time.
Well, and at the end of the day, you just if you feel that way, don't go to the show. Don't buy the record. Don't just keep cherish what you have.
Yes.
And move on.
Yes.
and new bands coming all the time.
And I think Howard Stern said it the best. When he was on, especially here in Montreal in the 90s or in Q107 in Toronto, they would always talk about censoring him. The CRTC should shut him down and so on and so forth. And he said, listen, if you don't like what I'm saying, just turn the channel. And if enough people turn the channel, eventually the the radio people will say, hey, you've got no listeners. You got to go.
Right.
And that's the best thing. And that goes for my show or your show or anybody's show. If you don't like what I'm saying, go somewhere else. But don't put up this, I need to censor him. I need to get Guitar Hack off the air. No, you don't. That's all you need to do. And people just waste all this energy being angry. Oh, Kiss is not like they were in 1983. Guess what, sweetie? Neither are you.
That's
like,
true.
It's enough. And if you don't like it, don't go. I went to the End of the Road tour.
I did too.
I saw 3 shows.
Wow.
We can debate whether or not it's all live or not. It doesn't matter. I went with a buddy. I had a lot of fun. It was a great evening. There were lights. There was smoke. I'm good. You know, is it a rock
Yeah.
show or is it a rock performance? I don't know. Maybe it's a rock performance. It's okay. I enjoyed it. I'm good.
So if folks, if you've got questions for Mitch,
I
just
see
tag me in the chat.
Scorps. Scorps have phenomenal guitar work. Damn straight they do.
Yeah, yeah. Just tag us. And here's a question for you. Brian is thanking you for that answer. Andy Dion has a question. What band have you interviewed that has the most critics?
Oh, easily. I've interviewed Ted Nugent many times, and it just always gets an incredible amount of hate. But I think that as a journalist, you need to be neutral. I do rock journalism, so I interview somebody like Ted Nugent about his rock pedigree.
Music. Yeah.
Um, I'm not here to pontificate on whether or not his politics are good or bad. I'm here to tell you that he played Stranglehold and he played Cat Scratch Fever, and it always gets people very, very irritated that I've interviewed him. But you know, that's what we do, and you know, I'm not. Maybe I am going to compare myself, but listen. Sometimes you look at a Christiana Amanpour on CNN or whatever, and she's gone out and interviewed whoever, Putin or Bin Laden or what. Are you going to say to them, "Well, you can't do that because you don't like their that doesn't make sense." You want to get their story, and you want to understand why they're coming from that position. So, I think I think it's fair and reasonable to interview somebody like Ted Nugent. And if you don't like the politics, well, you know what? Turn it off. And I get people that write me and say, I'm not going to listen to this interview. Okay. That's
Okay.
absolutely a fair and reasonable. No, but and that's not a pejorative kind of okay. It's a very fair and reasonable response.
Yeah.
You think that it's not for you, then don't listen. That's fair.
Yeah.
But you know, the ones that'll send you these emails of you're an a-hole, and it's just like, oh, you know, just don't listen. Don't listen. And you know what? I don't interview him every week. I've done 3 interviews in 30 years. I mean, you know, calm yourself.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Who was, when you were first coming up, who was like the first big name that you were able to sit down with?
That's a good question. So who was I sitting down with back in like 96, 97? One of the very first ones I remember was Nuno Betancourt from Extreme,
Huge fan.
which was really very cool. You know, there was a guy, and I'm trying to think of his name now. I can't remember his name. Anyway, they had given the interview to him, and he got sick as a dog the day of the interview or the night before, and he says, Mitch, I got Nuno Betancourt tomorrow or later today. I can't remember. I can't do it. I'm dying here. Can you I'll give them your number and you do it. And I'm like, well, what are we talking about? Oh, schizophrenia. And I go, perfect. I bought it. I'm good. I have it. I've heard it. So that was one of the first ones I remember. There was, of course, LA Guns that I was doing a lot at the time. And then pretty much, you know, pretty much anybody. I've always been sort of lucky as you know, who I interview. I didn't spend a lot of time interviewing the guy at the bar in downtown Toronto. But, you know, it's always been marquee names. Luckily, sorry.
Oh, that's cool. Jack Clark's got a question, and I knew this was going to come up. Ask Mitch about Vinnie Vincent.
Yeah, I can answer about Vinnie. You know, Vinnie and I, for a period of time, exchanged emails. I, in fact, sent him an email about 2 weeks ago, but he's never answered. He's been nice to me. You know, I've heard all kinds of horrible stories. I've spoken to all kinds of people that have worked with him or been around him, and most of them end up with not so good things to say. But I did an interview with Vinnie, and you can go on YouTube and find it. You know, from about 2 or 3 years ago, and we did about an hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes, and he couldn't have been nicer. He was exceptionally sweet. The interview was exceptionally good. I thought in terms of his answers. You know, again, and that goes a little bit like what I'm saying about Ted Nugent. I don't have to deal with the business side of Vinnie Vincent. I don't have to deal with the politics of Vinnie Vincent or the how much money Ted Nugent made. I just have to deal with the rock questions. And in terms of rock questions, Ted was very nice to me. Vinnie Vincent was very nice to me. I have no complaints. Do I think he saved Kiss? I think that's sort of a rhetorical question, sort of almost a dumb question, because, it takes a village,
Yes.
If Vinnie had written songs and Paul hadn't sang them, would they have been any good? If Vinnie had played a solo and it had not been on the Kiss record with Eric, you sort of need, and if they had written these great songs and been put on a great record and the record company hadn't promoted it and nobody had ever heard it, would, everybody's in on it together. This whole concept that one guy saved everything is sort of like, okay, well, yeah, sure, if you want. I don't buy it, but okay.
Yeah. Here's another question for you. Guitar Meets Science. Jimmy's asking, did Mitch ever interview Yngwie?
I have, and I've had some great Yngwie stories. First of all, and I'll start at the beginning, and I'll go through this quickly, but years and years ago when I was in university, there was a little university newspaper that had coming up today, the basketball teams playing this, and they had a little lost and found in there. And I had said, lost, whatever, one electric guitar. If you find it, please contact Yngwie Malmsteen. And they ran it. And I just thought that was the funniest little thing that they didn't bother checking. But
right.
I'm trying to think of the year now. Boy, it was Dio, Doro Pesch, and Yngwie Malmsteen at the Roseland Ballroom in New York City. So maybe 2000. Anyway, I was in the pit taking the pictures, and back then cameras had a little thing where you push a button, the flash would pop up, right?
Right.
And of course, these shows are no flash. You're not allowed a flash. First 3 songs, no flash. Anyway, so I'm running around the pit, and it's New York City, and people are flying over the barricades, and I mean, it's a scene. And I'm taking these pictures, and somewhere there, I must have hit the little button, and the flash popped up. I didn't notice, so I get Yngwie, and he's right at me, hit the thing, and it flashes in his face.
Oh.
He smashes the camera out of my hand and goes, no pictures, and walks away. And I was like, oh, all right. And then I'm trying to think how long it was after, a year or 2 after. I do a phoner with him. A phoner is a phone interview. So I do a phoner with him, and we got along great. And he's, and I tell him about the store, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I must have been having a bad night or whatever. And then we start talking about Sweden, and we start talking about Denmark. And I say, oh, my family lives in Copenhagen, and we take the boat over to Malmo. And he goes, oh, Malmo, there's a place there called the so-and-so. Do you know it? And I go, no. He goes, oh, it's the greatest pizza ever. Whenever you get to Malmo the next time, I buy the pizza for you. I take you. And of course, I never got to Malmo to eat pizza with Yngwie Malmsteen, but we went from him smashing the camera out of my hand to let's have pizza together in Malmo, Sweden. So, all right, interesting guy.
So what? This is probably going to be a tough one to answer, but well, I'll start with this. Who was, of all the names, the first one to pop in your head, like who was like the coolest, just the coolest person to interview? With attitude wise.
Oh, there's a lot of them that are exceptionally nice. So Rob Halford is one of the best. Rob is just such a gentleman. Again, I've seen him angry backstage at people for doing stuff, but that's not the world I'm in. I'm in the interview world, and in that world, super kind, super nice, super friendly. Alice Cooper is absolutely always friendly. Now, I don't know if I was saying this on air or off air, but he has the hard 15 minutes, and at 14 minutes 45 seconds, they come on and go, well, this will be the last question,
Right.
But it's always it's always exceptionally kind and exceptionally cool. Boy, who else is good in there? I did 2 interviews with David Coverdale in June.
Mm-hmm.
2 separate interviews at 2 separate times, 2 months ago. David's always exceptionally nice, and we follow each other back and forth on Twitter. So I'll post something about Whitesnake, and he'll answer it right back. Like we did that today, and we did it like 2 days ago, and it's just
Cool.
So David's always kind of nice. Over here, somebody said, "Have you interviewed Doro?" Yeah, many times. Doro's in fact, I interviewed Doro a month ago. She was doing some of these drive-in shows out in Germany, so we did a whole interview about drive-in shows, and she's just always been a super, super sweetheart. I mean, she's supposed to be at this M3 festival that was going to take place in Columbia, Maryland in May. Got postponed. Now it's for 2021. Head over to Columbia, Maryland, go to the M3 festival, go see Dora when she's on North American shores. You'll see. She's a sweetheart. I mean, just a real gem of a real person.
That's cool. So on the other side of the coin, who are like the miserable, I don't want to talk to anybody types? I don't want you to ruin or give out any secrets here, things that might mess you up in the future, but
no, and I don't like to trend in the negative.
Right.
I've had 2 bad interview moments, but then the interviews after with the same persons were absolutely wonderful. The first time I interviewed Blackie Lawless of Wasp, it was a train wreck, and I think there was a lot of circumstances to the train wreck. I had interviewed the likes of Don Dawkin, Brett Michaels, Rob Halford, and Gene Simmons, where you ask them a question and then you sit back for 20 minutes and you do your nails and I don't do my nails, but and they give you their answers, and you have there's no heavy lifting.
Right.
The first time I interviewed Blackie Lawless, I was expecting sort of there's no heavy lifting, so I didn't have a lot of preparation, just enough figuring, okay, we've got enough questions here to fill 20 minutes, we'll be done. And of course, there was a lot of yes, no answers, and it sort of just didn't really go anywhere. And he was annoyed by that, but I sensed coming into it that he was annoyed. So he might have been having a bad day,
yeah.
And I wasn't where I needed to be, so that whole thing, and so it was a mess. And then I interviewed him 2 years ago or 3 years ago, which, by the way, it's not on YouTube. I should probably put it up on YouTube, but he couldn't have been nicer. They gave me a hard 20 minutes, and I think we did 55.
Wow.
So, he absolutely couldn't have been nicer. Another one was Dave Navarro. The very, very first time he called and he goes, "Hey, it's Dave Navarro for the interview." And I go, "What interview?" He goes, "Oh, the publicist." I went, "No, they didn't." So the publicist had given them my name and my number, but I wasn't aware. And I said, "Well, okay, Dave, we'll try. What are you talking about? Well, let's." And of course he was annoyed, and it didn't go well. And then trying to think, October of 2019. Oh man, I need a pool boy to bring me drinks too.
That's my son. It's coffee time.
I got my coffee.
This is usually a Tim Hortons cup, but it's a homemade
I got a Huey Lewis cup today. Look at that. Prime time Huey Lewis. But we did this interview for Music Cares, which is this foundation that gives money to struggling musicians and stuff. And he couldn't have been sweeter. So, sometimes when people say, "Oh, the worst interview," and it's like, you know what, you got to look at both sides. First of all, were you the best interviewer? You may not have been. And second of all, everybody has a shitty day. So to say you had one bad interview and that makes that person a horrible person.
Yeah.
Did I like Blackie Lawless after that? No. Did I like Dave Navarro after that? No. Do I like them now? Yeah, because we did second interviews. I was better prepared. It was fine. It was perfectly fine. Another one that almost went down that road is George Thorogood. And when I got my first George Thorogood, Bad to the Bone interview, everybody said, and people in the industry, radio DJs and stuff. I said, I'm interviewing you. They all said, oh, he's horrible.
Right.
So I go down to the venue, which is the Metropolis in Montreal, now the MTELUS. And I go see Adam, the tour manager, and he says, okay, come on to the bus. And so I go on to the bus and I turn on the tape recorder and I start asking him questions. And he's not answering. And he's just staring at me like, get the fuck off my bus, you know?
Oh shit.
So I have this in my head that these other people said that he does this. So I stopped the interview. I turned it off and I said, listen, I said, I've got 20 minutes to fill. So I'm either going to fill it with you or I'm going to fill it alone. It really doesn't make a difference to me, you know? And he looked at me and he had a smile on his face. He said, turn it on. And I did. And then he gave me an hour.
Nice.
And what I found out, because I've been around the George Thorogood camp quite a bit since, is that he's a ball buster. But he's not a ball buster to be an ass. He's a ball buster to be funny. And if you can, he likes to see you sweat. So if you can hang,
right,
he'll drop that thing and then he'll hang. And if you get all frazzled and start sweating and you run off the bus, he'll sit with his buddies and say, did you see that? Man, we really made him sweat. So it's for fun. You know, like when he does his meet and greets. No, you don't.
You know that now. You didn't know that going in, though, right? That's the whole thing.
I didn't, but I don't scare from anyone. You know, I just don't scare. I don't get nervous. I don't, to me, they're just people, whether it's Paul Stanley or Vinnie Vincent or George, it makes no difference.
Here's a question from Brian S. He's a big ZZ Top fan, specifically Billy Gibbons. So he's asking if you've interviewed Billy.
I have not interviewed Billy, but I do have a ZZ Top story, though exceptionally short. They played the Bell Center in Montreal probably in 2015, I guess, maybe. And the opening band asked that I come out and interview the opening band. And so I went out to interview the opening band. Mm-hmm. And they took me backstage to the dressing rooms. And there I got to see the band walk by and stuff and, wave and say, hey, how's it going?
Right.
I think David Letterman used to call that a brush with greatness, right? And so I had a brush with greatness. Mm-hmm. Didn't get to interview them, of course, got to see the show. The show was great. The very, very first time I saw them was an outdoor show in Montreal. And I hate to think when it was. Might have been on the Lap of Luxury tour for Cheap Tricks, maybe 87, 88. Anyway, it was outdoor. And there were thunderstorms and just dark clouds. So, we get to this outdoor place and it's just mud. It's awful.
Miserable.
And the sun comes out and Cheap Trick plays. And the whole time Cheap Trick plays, the sun is out. And it's like, oh, it's over. We will now have a rock show. And then ZZ Top comes on, an hour later or whatever.
Yeah.
No more sunshine. No.
Oh, shit.
It was this kind of rain where you just couldn't see your own hand. It was a deluge, right? Got to say my words right. You couldn't see anything. And so there were some tractor trailers and we went and hid under the tractor trailers, the cabins or whatever to be sheltered from the rain, but forget it. It was on a slope. So it was just all coming down from the slope and coming right underneath the it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So they kept playing. To their credit, they didn't stop. I don't know how they didn't stop because how they didn't get electrocuted is beyond me. Yeah. But I watched maybe 4 songs and I just went, no, I'm out. I'm not spending, the next 2 hours like a fish in water. It's no. So, but that's my first ZZ Top experience. I got washed out. Couldn't take it. Big pussy.
So who's your white whale? Who's the interview that you've tried? I mean, you did get the Paul finally. Like, is there anybody else that you're like, you'd love to interview, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't lined up yet?
Well, plenty. I've been trying forever to get John Bon Jovi on the phone. I've been trying forever to get Axl Rose. I've been trying to get Ozzy. Um,
Oh, okay.
you know, this is just not going to happen at this point. You know, I've put in requests at different times for Metallica, and I've gotten Rob Trujillo a couple of times, and I've gotten Kirk Hammett a couple of times, and I keep saying, all right, I've done those guys a couple of times. Can we bump up to Lars? And, you know, Metallica has a project coming out in, I think it's October, this S&M 2 album. And I've told the record company, can we bump up to Lars? And it's not confirmed, and it's not even in the wind right now. But I'd love to get Lars, and then maybe from Lars bump up to James, because it'd be interesting. But you know, how often do you see a James Hetfield interview? I mean, they don't happen. You know, it's very rare.
Yeah. Well, you see
But,
Lars a lot more often, I think, than you see James.
right, but you see Lars a lot on CNN or on Fox or on MSNBC or
Right.
you know, some kind, you know, VH1. You don't see Lars on, you know, the whatever podcast. It's super rare. So I don't know if they're white whales. And some of them, Axl Rose is just, it's never going to happen. You know, you're not going to interview Axl Rose. You have to sort of accept it.
Yeah. Well, you got Slash though.
Oh yeah, I've gotten Slash a bunch of times, 4 times, 5 times.
Yeah.
Had a chance to hang out with him a couple of times, and the last show I saw in Ottawa, thanks to Slash and his entourage, they put us in the VIP room, which was right next to the stage, and it was a room where you could basically walk to it during the show, walk back and forth during the show, but it was a fully stocked room. I don't drink alcohol, but it was of course fully stocked with alcohol and pretzels and chips and waters and a bathroom. So we were out in Ottawa at the what is that field in Ottawa? I forget what the field is called in Ottawa, where the Rough Riders play, or whatever what are they called now? The Red Blacks. See how old I am? I said Rough Riders. But so I got to go back and forth to this VIP room, and so as they were playing and going into the interminable solos, I'd get to go pee and I'd get to go have a fresh water, and you know, it was 30 degrees outside, but when you're in, you know, so I've been treated well in that sense. Can't complain too much. Could complain, but
with all these, so I think I don't know if we did this on air or off air, but you were saying that how now everybody's wanting to interview because they can't promote like they used to.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your sense when you're talking to all these folks and interviews? And I've seen a few, actually 2 that you did today, and everybody sort of has a different perspective on this. When are we going to go back out? Some are using the time, hey, you know what? I'm going to write. I'm going to do some recording. I'm going to put some music out. Others are just kind of sitting on their, kind of just sort of waiting and hoping they were going to go out. Like, what's the general consensus out there? Yeah,
I'll give you that in a second. I see Michael Lapinzi says, what new metal tune and bands are coming up now? I don't know if he means new bands or classic, but Raven have an album coming out in September called Metal City, which if you're that kind of fan, you should definitely check out Metal City. I've heard it's a fantastic hard rock metal album. The sense of touring, you know, it's funny. When we started this in April, May, the sense was, hey, we'll be back by Halloween. Don't worry about it. We'll take 6 months off. La vie est belle. You know, life is good. Now, as I'm starting to talk to them, it's sort of coming down to 2 camps. You've got the one camp that says, screw it, we're all going to die at some point, so let's die rocking and let's get back out in shows. And you know, I've talked to some of the guys that have done the Sturgis show, and everybody's going, wow, you're playing Sturgis during a pandemic? You know, and they're like, listen, if we catch it, we catch it. It's my choice. And then there's the other kind, the other camp that are just like, I'm out, man. You know what? I don't even think 2021 is going to happen. So there just seems to be a lot of confusion. You know, folks thought that it was a pause. You know, a lot of the government said, you know, Ontario is on pause. You know, Quebec is on pause. And then it wasn't on pause. You know, now it's stretching out. It's no longer a pause. It's, you know, And so those bands there seems to be this sense of confusion of, okay, well, now we're in the fall where we all thought we were going to be back on the road, and it seems to be getting worse in some parts, and it seems to be getting worse in some countries, and other countries won't let us travel. A lot of these bands, especially the American bands, they do great in the States sometimes, but a lot of them do great by going to Japan or by going to Australia or coming up to Canada. And now those countries won't let them in. So even if they wanted to go tour, you cannot fly into these countries as a band. So it doesn't matter how much you want, you can't go anywhere. And
that's a good point, because even though, Canada and I think parts of Europe and whatever are, in a better state in terms of the pandemic.
Yes.
But if they're coming from the U.S., they're still not going to be able to go and hit these places anyway. So that's a good point. I never thought of that. That's true.
But if you're in Germany or Australia and stuff, and you say, hey, we're flying. Now remember, a band is maybe 4 guys, but those 4 guys have the truck driver and the roadie, and now all of a sudden it's 20. You're flying 20 people to come tour your country. It's like, yeah, no, you're not. Well, yeah, but pandemic's over there. Yeah, and we want to keep it that way. So back up.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult proposition. And the other thing that a lot of people don't think about is the middle ground. The Staples Center, the what do you call it now? Not the Scotiabank place, I guess, not the ACC. Those big venues are, in a sense, and we'll use, back in the day we talked about the banks being too big to fail, right? Those places aren't going to close. At some point, if they say the ACC's out of money, the Ontario government, the Toronto government will step in and subsidize and make a loan and make. They're not doing that for the smaller venues. So if you're Madonna, if you're U2, if you're Metallica, and you need to sit it out for 2 years, and then they say, okay, it's all open. Well, the venues you play will be there for you.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter. I'll go play the ACC or whatever it's called in 2 years. We're fine. The one where it matters is those smaller places. What's the one you have in Toronto? Where all the few.
Massey Hall.
Massey. What's the one with the R? A rock pile.
Oh, that's
rock pile in Toronto. Yeah, right.
Yeah, east and west. Yeah.
Right, but the Rock Pile and the Brass Monkeys and those little bars where some of the smaller bands will play, the LA Guns will play, and those places may close if this stretches on for. So those places, they won't have places to go. You try to route a tour as a smaller band where you're playing these bars, and you've got a bar in New York City, and then all the bars in Boston have closed that take rock bands, and all the bars in Montreal that take rock. There's going to be no routing. There's going to be no place to go. Right. So Metallica and Madonna and U2, they've got the money to sit it out. And even if they didn't have the money to sit it out, they have the brand name that when it goes back up, they're good to go. We're going to lose these middle venues. So first we're going to lose the Rock Pile, and then we'll lose the Brass Monkey, and then eventually we'll lose Massey Hall, and then we'll lose, Théâtre Saint-Denis in Montreal and all. And then all of a sudden your B-listers and your C-listers and your D-listers, and I say that respectfully, that but a spade's a spade, they'll disappear, and there'll be no place to play. So there won't be a middle ground. There'll be either your backyard at a barbecue entertaining your friends, or the Staples Center. The problem is that you can't make money playing at a backyard for that. And LA Guns, God love them, they ain't playing the Staples Center.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Well, I get what you're, especially with the bar thing. Like I'm playing a bar band, and I haven't gigged since March.
Right. And so when this is over, but even if you want to, there may be no place to go.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. A lot of because we've been doing it for like a while. We had they were calling us, and we were at that point, and now are those calls gonna come in? Are those bars still gonna be around when all this is over? Right.
And that's going to affect the music business for the next 10 to 15 years, because before Metallica became Metallica, before Madonna became Madonna, they played bars, and they played the Rib Fest, and they played all that nonsense that's in between, your basement and stardom. And there are a lot of bands right now. There's a lot of 17, 18, 24-year-olds that are super talented, that should be the next big thing, that are going to sit here and go, wow, I have a choice of throwing myself on YouTube or giving this up, because they're going to want to go out and play, Metallica 2.0. They're going, we're the new Metallica. We're going to go play the rock. Oh, it's closed. We're going to go play the oh, it's closed. We're going to go. It's closed. Like, oh, well, so there's going to be there's going to be the next 4 or 5 years of these bands that are just going to be lost. And yes, new bars will open, but it's not just magical. New bar opens, it has to establish a clientele. It has to establish people that want. It has to find a booker that brings in the right shows. Like there's a lot of moving parts. Closing it is easy. You turn off the light, you shut the door, it's closed. Opening it is difficult, and cultivating it where bands trust to come to your venue, where a guy from LA is going to drive all the way to Toronto to play a bar he's never heard of. No, of course not. He needs a reputation, and needs a booker, and that's going to be a problem. So there's going to be this period of time where new bands are really going to be treading water, because they'll have no place to go. And it'll be like, okay, well, it's going to be a streaming concert because I can't play in Calgary. There's no bar there.
Yeah. Here's a question from Brian S. Who's asking you, who is the person Mitch was all calm to interview, then when he met them, he got starstruck? Ever? Anyone?
Never. I don't get starstruck. And that is not any sense of bravado. I just don't. Because I don't see the rock star as being anything other than just a person I'm going to ask questions to. And I know this might all sound sort of strange, but first of all, I've been doing it since 1996, so I'm around these people all the time. So it's not a novelty. And second of all, I just don't put people on a pedestal. I'm just as excited to talk to you tonight as I was to talk to the guy from Collective Soul this afternoon. And if you watch both interviews, it's the same voice, it's the same demeanor. I'm not like, oh, he's the Collective Soul guy. Oh, it's not. And
that would put them off too, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I treat both of you with the same respect. I'm answering the same questions. I'm offering the same deference. So no, I don't get nervous at that stuff. Maybe some of the guys that are on that list, like Axl Rose or John Bon Jovi. Well, I've met John Bon Jovi. Maybe because I know that it would be like once in a lifetime. If I don't get this right and I screw it up, I don't get a part two. Like with Blackie Lawless, I screwed up part one and part two turned out great, and I'll probably get a part three at some point in the next 5 years, probably. If I got an Axl Rose, maybe you'd be like, oh shit, I got 10 minutes. It's better be great, because there'll never be another 10 minutes ever. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Anyway, so I answer that with total honesty. I don't get nervous around them, and it's not because I'm a tough guy or because, no, it's just, George Thorogood is the same as you.
It's another day at the office for you, is what you're saying.
In a sense, yeah. But it sounds like as though I'm just sort of brushing it aside and like I'm a tough guy. No, it's people are.
No, I get it. It's your job. It's another day at the office. It's like me waiting for Paul to come out of from doing Phantom of the Opera. I'm there as a fan. I'm not there. This is my job, and I'm here to interview Paul. You know what I mean? So it's a different mindset, right? So
and I talk to people the same way when I go to the grocery. When I'm at Costco and I'm talking. I talk to them the same way I talk. I don't treat people of, oh, you're a janitor, so I speak to you differently, and you're Paul Stanley, so you get this. No, there's one Mitch, and one Mitch talks to the same. I don't do that. I know.
Right. So we're at the hour mark, Mitch. So I don't know how you're feeling. If you wanted to go a little bit longer, if you're
the Vegas Chicago game's in a break, so let's I'll give you this intermission. So I'll give you another 15.
Another
or
15.
10 or 10, whatever you want.
15 or 10. Okay, well, it's up to you, man. You're driving the bus.
Go for it.
Anyone's got any other
I'm not dead yet.
questions? If anyone has any other questions for Mitch, throw them in. And for the last 10 minutes or so. So you mentioned that, because this I didn't know. I didn't know about the photography thing. So tell us a little bit about that.
One of the magazines that I was writing for said, "Listen, if you can start doing pictures, we'll give you $25 a picture." And it was beneficial in a sense that now I could go to shows and say, "Hey, people at a show, I'm gonna show up and take pictures, and hey, I'm gonna go home with great pictures of Aerosmith and Kiss and Ozzy." And so it was an all around winning proposition. But I am in no way a photographer, though. I ended up with great shots of the Scorpions and Cheap Trick and Kiss, and I did some great work. I thought it was fantastic. So that was short lived, and I gave it up. It became no. I haven't interviewed anybody from Led Zeppelin down there. It became a bit of a mess. It became harder and harder, and they would say three tickets and we throw you three songs and we throw you out of the venue, and it's like
what?
We started off with it's 3 songs, and when you're done with the 3 songs, just go to the back of the room. Nobody's going to bother you. And then, of course, when cell phones came in and everybody was taking pictures on cell phones and posting them online, they responded by not banning cell phones, but by attacking the photographers by going, all right, well, you got 3 songs, and then we're walking you out of the building. And it's like, but I'm not posting it on whatever, the Usenet group. So, and then after a while, they got to know me, and they're like, oh, well, you can stay, but everybody else has to leave. And it just became, have I interviewed Rick Emmett? Yes, last week. It is on my, YouTube page from last Wednesday, by the way.
Oh, there you go.
And it was a good interview. It was a Zoom interview on top of that.
Let me mention this. Mitch has a YouTube channel, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. I have the link for that below.
Yeah.
I also have a link to your Facebook page below. So if you are not subscribed to Mitch's channel, you should. He is throwing up all kinds of interviews.
Daily.
And
it's crazy.
Daily. Yeah. And I mean,
the Rick Emmett, by the way, was great. And see, that's one where I was told, oh, Rick is a miserable son of a gun. And somebody goes, it's the worst interview I ever, a guy named Kurt said, it's the worst interview I've ever done. Boy, and I went, okay. Did the interview, and you can go watch it. You can watch us. It's on a Zoom. And he was fine. He was out. I think if you treat people nice, they generally treat you nice back. If you go back, anyway. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not one to blame others. I always, when something goes wrong, I go, okay, what did I do? And then if I'm 100% absolved, I go, okay, he's the problem. But most times, it's sort of 50-50, 60-40 when, anyway. But, and it says that my YouTube is a YouTube user at Angel of 8. So I opened it a long time ago, my YouTube, like 20 years ago.
Right.
And at the time, you couldn't use your name. You had to have a pseudonym. And since then, they've now said you can change it, and it doesn't want to let me. It doesn't want to let me change it to a new name. And I probably should try again, but I'm almost at 2 million views, so I'm not going to close it.
No, God, no.
And I'm certainly not going to reload all these videos. So forget.
Oh, no,
not going to happen.
Have you, it's a question from you, Caldwell. He's asking about Lemmy, if you've interviewed Lemmy.
Oh, I have great stories about Lemmy. Yeah, I've interviewed Lemmy.
Well, let's close on that. Oh, thank you, Eddie Dion, for the super chat. Awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Lemmy, this is the greatest one. He was playing at a place in Montreal called the Medley. Le Medley. Small little club, and the promoter, now this was in May or end of April, and the promoter said, hey, Mitch, I know you're the journalist guy and you're going to take pictures and stuff and so on, but I don't have anybody to help out. Would you mind being the runner? And the runner is the guy that goes back and forth and so on and so forth. So I go, okay, I'll be the runner. So I show up to the venue super early, and they said, okay, this is the rider. Head over to the local. Whoops, I just hit my passes there. Head over to the local grocery store and pick this up and pick that up, and go to the SAQ, the beer place or whatever, and get this stuff. And so I go do all that. I do all the grocery shopping for Motorhead's rider. Right. And then they said, oh God, our chauffeur hasn't shown up, blah, blah, blah. Can you go pick up Lemmy at the hotel? Fine. So I go take the van. I go get Lemmy at the hotel, and it starts snowing, like just this incredible snow. Oh, and so we're sitting in the van, and the back door to the venue's not open, and it's snowing like you couldn't believe. And Lemmy has like basically just a little jean jacket, and he's sitting there going, he's going, this is why I didn't want to tour in Canada before May, because in May it's supposed to be warm. It's not supposed to be snowing. If I wanted snow, I would have come in February. So I don't know. I go, it's the first time in 25 years we've had snow in May, So we're having this conversation, and he, I don't know, I guess he takes to me and he says, you going to the show? I go, yeah, I'm going to go take pictures. And he goes, no, come on. And so I go in, and I got to see them watch, I got to see sound check and stuff. And then I'm up in the dressing room, and he had these 2 40s of vodka, and he finished them, and he was perfect. He was perfectly straight, and so he lets me watch the show from the side of the stage, which by the way, everybody goes, can I watch the show from the stage? No, don't ever do that. The sound goes out. There's no sound on the stage. You watch a band on the stage. You never hear a band on the stage.
Right? Yeah.
Especially now with in-ears. With in-ears, there's the stages are silent. Right. But so he's doing that. And then Phil is like, I need margaritas. So I'm running around with pictures of margaritas for Phil. And they had built this barricade because Motor had demanded a barricade. A lot of bands, the barricades are sometimes up to the band, or most times. So they built the barricade. The fans start crushing forward. The barricade collapses. Lemmy goes off to the side of the stage, and we're away from the stairs that go to the dressing room. And he's like, is there any other way? And I go, well, it goes into the kitchen, and from the kitchen we can go around and blah, 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 and up and down. And, he's like, well, I'm not doing that. Not with this thing on my neck. And, he's holding his bass. Not with this. I'm not going through a kitchen. And eventually they get the barricade back up, and he goes back out. And it was just one of these wild and crazy nights. And it's funny because at the end of the show, my friend who worked for Sony is there, and he says, can I get a picture with Lemmy? And they take a picture, and then Lemmy says, oh, you've been helpful all day, you should take one. And I said no, I'm working here, I'm not, and I didn't take the fucking picture. And it's like, God. Shit. Yeah. And there's been other instances with Lemmy. I'm trying to think. They were at the Bell Center with must have been Megadeth and maybe Lacuna Coil. I think that might have been the lineup about 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Anyway, I went backstage and I interviewed Mickey D, and that I have a picture of. That's smart. Yeah, man is thinking, And I got to meet so the guys were in the backstage area, and I got to say hello. And I'm trying to think. It was a double album that they were promoting at the time, like a double live. So it must have been like 2007 or something. Anyway, so I've had these instances at different festivals and stuff where they've played to run into them, and I got to say hello to Mickey D while he was doing the Scorpions tour recently, and so but that day at the medley in Montreal, you can probably Google Motorhead medley set list and it'll pop up. Must have been 2002. No, it's before 9/11. So yeah, maybe 99 or 2000, something like that. But what a day. I mean, I got to be his driver for an entire day. And
that's
of course,
cool, man.
years later, I went out to the Rainbow, and of course he was there, and he was there with Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit.
Biscuit.
But I guess, hey, drinking buddies are drinking buddies, right?
I guess so.
Yeah. So that's the Lemmy one. You know, good folks, good camp, and I've had a chance to interview not Filthy Phil, but Phil Campbell since then.
Right.
And he was good. You know, good times. Gotta like your Motorhead.
Yeah. All right.
I think it was Gigantatour. I think that's what it was, because it was Megadeth and a whole bunch of bands. Must have been Gigantatour with Motorhead and Lacuna Coil. Because I remember I interviewed Megadeth that day, I interviewed Mickey D that day, and I interviewed 2 people from Lacuna Coil that day. So there you go. So any questions we need to get caught up on before we
just seeing awesome guests. Everybody's digging it. So Mitch, I gotta ask you, do you want to do this again at some point?
Sure.
Are you up for that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So
seven's a good time for me.
7 is a good time. Okay,
yeah, eight I kick out, because think about it. It would be 9:30 right now.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
It's too far.
I hear you. All right, I want to thank.
I got to go watch the Leafs and the. Oh wait, they're not.
Oh wait, yeah. Well, you know what, Mitch? They follow the script, right? They're always out in the first round. They just follow the script, man. They do it every time.
Since 2004, they have not gotten past. Wow.
Yes. Feel my pain.
It is unbelievable, and
yes.
Yeah, the Leafs. Somebody says, "Am I from Toronto or Montreal?" I am definitely from Montreal. It says, "How is D Snyder to interview?" D is always great to interview. You know, he's D's one of those wind up dolls, and I mean that respectfully. You just ask a question, you go whoop, and he'll just run with it for 10 minutes.
I remember when actually I saw it. I heard it just this week. That when D came on, remember when he was at war with Paul Stanley?
Yeah,
and
that was funny.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, if you go to my YouTube channel, and I'll end on this story, but I have a video with, it says whatever, it's D Snyder talks Paul Stanley or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's
got like 120,000 views or some ridiculous thing. It was midnight, and I get this call. He goes, "Hey, it's Mitch, it's D Snyder, and I want to talk about Paul Stanley." And I went, "But it's midnight." So I said, "All right, call me back in 2 minutes. I'll go up to the computer. I'll set up the recording stuff." And so that's what you hear on that YouTube video. It's this.
Oh, okay.
It's this middle of the night call, and we're talking about that thing from that fight with Paul Stanley. Now, of course, since then they've had pictures together and they've talked nicely about it.
Yeah.
But by the way, CBJ, I like Brian. That's a good thing. You know, and it was just this moment, and I threw it up on YouTube, and it's got like this crazy amount of views for this sort of throwaway interview. Let's see here. I seen Lacuna Coil at the Masquerade. Yeah, Lacuna Coil's a good thing. I don't know. Black Guitar Nut. He's from
Blackjack Guitar Nut. Yeah,
Blackjack Guitar Nut from Montreal. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. Drunk. No, I don't have any drunk D rants because D doesn't drink.
Yeah.
Any last question, folks? Because we shall wrap it up. Any last Kiss nerdy stuff?
Well, you know, that's the one thing I do every once in a while. I'll do an all Kiss episode.
Right.
So maybe what I'll do one in a few weeks, and maybe I'll ask you if you want to come on and do that, because
we'll talk Kiss all night.
Yeah, I don't know if my chat knows I'm a huge Kiss fan, and if you've noticed, we only talked about Kiss a little bit. We could have gone on for hours just on Kiss. So we've spared you.
Down here it says, have I ever asked about Van Halen? Yeah, I've had a chance to interview some Van Halen folks. I've interviewed Sammy. I've interviewed Michael Anthony. I've interviewed Gary Cherone, if you want to count that. You know, I've heard all kinds of great Van Halen music that a lot of people haven't heard. You know, yeah, I love my Van Halen. Last May, I was invited by Sammy's manager to go see him in New Hampshire. New Hampshire. Where in New Hampshire though? Guilford, New Hampshire, and they were playing with Night Ranger. And Sammy has a little bar at the back for his guests, a little tequila bar for his guests. And we got to go back there, and all the guests got to have a shot of this. And I don't drink, so I didn't. I gave it to my buddy who drank way too much that day. But just before they started ushering the people out and saying the show's about to start, usher out, usher out, usher out. Tom, who's the manager, said, "Come over." He said, "Take a picture, take a picture." So we got a picture of me, Jeremy, my buddy, and Sammy, and we did one picture, and Sammy goes, "That's not a rock pose. Let's do another one." So if you go to my Twitter and my Facebook, or maybe I don't even know, maybe if you Google Mitch Lafon, Sammy Hagar, I haven't done that, but you could probably see those two pictures because I have prominently displayed them because meeting Sammy Hagar,
yeah, man. Sammy
and it was
Hagar.
funny because we were at the M3 festival in Columbia, Maryland earlier in the month of May, and Extreme played, and I'm very tight with the Extreme camp, so we got to hang out with got a picture with Gary, yada yada, after the show in the hotel, all kinds of extra partying and all kinds of extra stuff going on. And 2 weeks later, picture with Sammy Hagar, I'm like, 2 Van Halen singers in 3 weeks here. When are we seeing
pretty
Dave?
Good.
When are we seeing Dave?
Yeah, when are we seeing Dave? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I saw Dave earlier this year in concert, but I didn't meet him. Damn it.
Yeah, well, he opened for Kiss. That's probably where you saw him, right?
Yeah, he opened for Kiss, and it was interesting because I was backstage. We were back there. We were there, and he was on the bus, and a sound check. His band sound checked without him, and literally the show was at 7, and at 6:59, he walked in from the bus, went straight from the bus to the stage, did the show. Show ended, went straight back on the bus. So nobody got to see him. Wow. That's okay. People are going to complain and say, "Oh, well, he's ego with it." No, he's David Lee Roth. He's he's whatever, almost 70 years old. If he wants to chill out, let him chill out. Stop criticizing all the time. But I was disappointed. I was like, "Ooh, we're back," because we were at the venue at like 1 in the afternoon because I interviewed Doc McGee, So we were there the entire day, and I'm like, "Ooh, Dave's gonna be back here."
Nope.
I was like, "Damn it!"
Wow.
3 for 3. No. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Next time.
The Ghost Kiss guitarist. That is a long list.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2, and we'll get into the Kiss stuff because I
like Van Halen. Who's this? Andy Dion. I like the Gary Sharon Van Halen. Yeah, it's a good record.
I like Gary Sharon. I think the guy's a phenomenal singer. I think he's great. I love Extreme, man. I mean, just a great band.
Yeah, great band. New album coming out soon. It's good. It's a good one.
That I did not know.
It is done. It is complete. I've heard some of the music. Let's put it that way.
And
it's phenomenal. They really decided to just make the best hard rock extreme album they could make. They know exactly what they are. They know exactly what the deal is. They're probably not going to have singles running up the chart, so they just made the best freaking extreme. Oh, hey, look at that. That's the air conditioner. They just made the best extreme album they could make, and fans are, well, you know what? The whiner fans are going to be disappointed, but they whine at everything. But fans that are really into the band are going to hear this and they're just going to be like, "Yeah."
Oh, I love it, man. Speaking of new records that came out, man, have you heard the new Alcatraz record?
I have. I actually have an interview that I did in June with one of the guys from Alcatraz, which I haven't posted yet, but hopefully next week.
That record smokes, man. That is a fantastic album. I am so impressed with that record. Yeah.
And here's a fun fact. Gary Shea, and this we'll come full circle and we'll close it. Gary Shea plays on the new Alcatraz record. He's their bass player. Gary Shea was in New England. New England opened for Kiss in August of 1979. So one of the first people I saw in concert was Gary Shea, and one
Yeah.
of the last people we will talk about tonight is Gary Shea.
Is Gary Shea.
Full circle. There you go.
All right. Okay, folks. Mitch, hang on for a second. Want to thank Mitch for coming on. The show is awesome. We'll do a part 2 at some point. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. You guys rock. We will catch you next week with
From the spare bedroom.
From the spare. Next week, I will have Jeff Young, former guitarist for Megadeth, will be on the show. So you guys rock. Take care, everybody. And we'll see you soon. Cheers.